Vikings Guy, here for episode 14 of the podcast. I have Amy Hockert here. And for those of you who are from Minnesota, probably need no introduction. But Amy, why don't you tell everybody who you are, who's outside of Minnesota?
Sure. So I born and raised in Minnesota, and I've been a news anchor in this market for, a long time. In this market, probably more than 15 years, total more than 20. So yeah, and huge sports fan. Vikings are number one in my heart. So thanks for asking me to come on.
No, it's honestly my pleasure. I do work at US Bank Stadium part-time. And so I run into a lot of, in fact, the first night at the stadium, I ran into Julie Nelson and the whole Care 11 squad. And I was trying to make a joke to Julie Nelson. And then this, what I would call, and no disrespect, but a giant hand lands on the back of me. Could you imagine who that was? It was a woman. It was a woman.
It was a woman. Let's see. I don't know. I can't think of who that might be.
Belinda Jensen.
Oh, I was going to say Belle, but I was like, would she be there with? Okay, yeah.
She's got huge hands.
Yeah.
I love her. She's beautiful, but she's got giant hands for a woman.
I never noticed that about Belle.
When you watch her on the news now, you'll see this.
Now I'm going to see all hands. That's it.
She'd kill me if she knew I said that, but I mean, it's just kind of funny. So anyways, I appreciate you being here. Why don't you go ahead and give out your Twitter address, because I'm telling you, on Twitter, you are solid gold.
Oh, you're so nice. Thank you. Well, it's just at Amy Hockert. It's pretty easy. And it's tough because as coming up as a news person, you're sort of always taught to be really buttoned up. And so it's taken me a long time to get comfortable with the fact that I can just kind of say what I think sometimes on social media. And so I try, but yeah, I don't know. I have a dry sarcasm, and I love Minnesota sports. I'm a fanatic. So I just try to kind of put all it together, and Twitter's just kind of a ripe for that kind of a person, right? I'm not really an Instagram person. I'm not really a pretty picture, get myself all dolled up and have matching outfits with my kids or whatever. No shade to people on Instagram, but definitely Twitter and the real time kind of fun banter is definitely my speed.
It's kind of interesting. I think when you go back a few years before Elon Musk bought X, I still call it Twitter, but bought X, I felt like it was a lot different place than it is now. And it's just refreshing. I think what brought me to you, I mean, I've always been a fan, but what brought me to you on Twitter was, I think it was Viking stuff and Wolf stuff.
Yeah.
And, you're right. It's a dry humor, and you make a joke, and then sometimes you get destroyed because people don't get it. And some people will say stuff, and I'm like, folks, she's joking. This is supposed to be satire or sarcasm or whatever. It's supposed to be funny. And there's you got to be reading that stuff going, oh.
That's okay. Yeah. I know. I mean, you got to remember when we put it out to that Xverse or Twitterverse. I mean, it's a wide spectrum of people, and which is, I think, why it's so funny right now. And I won't go down this rabbit hole with you right now, but I think it's so funny that there seems to be this huge divide on X right now among Vikings fans, of those who are really so happy with the record and how just wow, we have to stay positive because we have this incredible record and nobody expected us to do this. And then you have this other group over here who's like, yeah, but they're still playing like junk sometimes, and I'm holding my breath every time Darnold releases the ball, or every time now backup kicker goes to kick a field goal. So, and then they started infighting, and I was like, what's going on here? So you definitely get a range of fandom, you get a range of personalities, but that's kind of what I like about Twitter. I don't go and block people unless there's something like obscene or pornographic or something, then I'll block them. But other than that, I want it all. I want to hear different viewpoints. I want to hear how people are thinking and feeling, even if it doesn't align with how I'm thinking about things.
Yeah. I will say this. One thing I like about X now is before, well, I'm on TikTok a lot. And so I have, like almost 13,000 followers on TikTok. And that's kind of where I cut my teeth, was TikTok. But this last summer I was doing a live, and I'm not honestly to this day sure what I said, but it zipped me off a live. It closed it down and then banned me from it for 7 days.
Huh.
Yeah. And having been on Twitter or X, I was like, what could I possibly have done? I've done way worse in other places.
But
And
just
like Facebook, you sort of got to follow it. On X and now it's sort of the Wild West, but on TikTok, I mean, there is no tolerance. Like they'll send you a message, hey, you have to get off and watch this video, or you're banned permanently.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not on TikTok just because I can't keep up. I don't have the time to like invest. I mean, just to do one TikTok video, people don't understand how much time and effort has to go into that. It's just like, oh, just
Hmm.
rip it off and you're, whatever. No, it takes a lot of work. So, especially
Yeah.
when you're older like me and it takes you 10 times longer to figure things out. It's not like I'm like, my 16-year-old kid who can just kind of
Yeah.
fire it off. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting to know that. Yeah, I feel like X has been a good sort of place to exchange ideas. Yeah, it's turned into a cesspool on some, in some ways. But I've been very intentional about keeping my feed very sports focused and really
Hmm.
shifting in that direction. And not even a lot of news. You're not going to find a lot of news on my site,
Yeah.
my Twitter page, X page, because it's just, you know, it. You can get that anywhere. Frankly,
Yeah.
I mean, you can get your
Right.
local news anywhere. You don't need to get it
Yeah.
from me. So, what can I bring to the table that might be, I don't know, interesting or different? So I'm
Well,
trying
and
to.
I think there's a couple things you've said that are interesting to me because I do a lot of these videos and I do informational stuff and I have a podcast. I am in no way a journalist. I don't aspire to be that. I don't have the training for it. And so, what I think I tell people, like what you do, is what I call big J journalism, like the big
Mhm.
J, like the
Yeah,
real stuff, the news. I mean, and I feel bad because I feel like some of the people that call themselves news people really who aren't, that just diminish the craft of how hard you've worked and the training you've done and the time you put in. And now it seems like, and like Elon Musk says, well, anybody with a camera is a journalist. No, 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 no. It's a craft. It's a skill. It's a skill set. And to say that anybody can grab a camera and record something, but
yeah.
the unique take on it, or their voice or their vision for how it turns out, that's what makes people like you different and special, I think.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think there's room for like you said, little, no J to little J to medium J to big J,
Right.
right? There's room for everything depending upon what you're looking for. I mean, we have seen, just look at this last I know we don't need to talk politics, but look at this last election cycle, and the fact of the matter is podcasts had so much power and raw
Mhm.
interviewing. And you wouldn't call somebody like Joe Rogan a big J journalist, but look what he was able to do in
Yeah.
that instance. So I think there is definitely a value to that. If that's what you're looking for in
Sure.
getting your information.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to things like, breaking news, local news, things that are happening, uh, you know, yeah, I would want somebody here in our newsroom who's been out in the field, who knows the ropes, who knows the players, the people involved. If
Yeah.
you look at something like, obviously one of the biggest stories we've had here in the Twin Cities ever was, George Floyd. You
Yeah.
look at something like the 35W bridge. I mean, these kinds of stories, that's when you really need somebody who has a depth to their knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Institutional knowledge. They're going to know that neighborhood in Minneapolis, or they're going to know that that bridge has been under investigate. They've been investigating
Sure.
that bridge, or you're going to want to have context that is real. But there are lots of things out there where people don't really necessarily need to have those types of specifics, and they just kind of want to glean, a little bit here or there. So then you do get kind of the citizen journalists going out, and they are in some cases uncovering stories that we may not have access to because of
Right.
our big J. We run into obstacles too, right? So I think there's a place for that, but I think as consumers, the most important thing is just to really understand where it's coming from, recognize it for what it is, and then go on with your day. Like, don't put
Yeah.
all your eggs in your Facebook page feed, because Aunt Susie, while she's fantastic, doesn't really have a handle on
Correct.
what's gonna real and what's not. So
Yeah.
you know that's that
Credibility. That's
that's
what it is.
yeah, it's
Credibility.
for
Yeah,
sure,
for
for
sure.
sure.
Yeah.
And in the big stories, those that'll kind of weed itself out, and you'll see who kind of has it and who doesn't. But for your everyday kind of stuff, you can. It's great to have more eyes out there. We have more
Right.
cameras rolling. I mean, again, talking about George Floyd. I mean, had we never had that video that young woman shot, think about it. Think
Yeah.
about how important
Yeah.
that was. So yeah, there's a value in all of it.
Mm.
It's just kind of being a smart consumer and
Right.
understanding the differences.
I think that video, especially the Floyd video, what it made people like, well, like I could just say what it made me feel was, have we missed a few of those?
Yeah.
Is it possible that things like, and you don't want to think the darkest part of humans, and I work around Minneapolis PD a lot, but is there times that stuff like that has happened
Yeah.
and it sort of just happened and it was, well, someone had a heart attack or someone had whatever, and you never see it. Um, and that's where journalists come in and can give that perspective. Like, I've lived here my whole life. I've seen cops do this, this, and this, or I've seen them not do this, this, or this, and add some context to it.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what you don't know. And I think for people seeing that the first time and having worked around law enforcement, I was a first responder and fire department and
Mhm.
firefighter for years. I kind of know what to expect out of law enforcement when I see it. And
Yeah.
that when I watched that video, I went, oh,
Yeah.
if that is what they're being trained,
Yeah.
no bueno. And
Right.
if it isn't what they're being trained, worse,
Yeah.
because again, that
Anytime
that
you
kind of
have
stuff. Yeah.
anytime you have human beings involved, I mean, whether it be a doctor or a police officer or a teacher, I mean, we're talking about human beings who are not perfect, and people who will have, very horrible judgment. And so my husband's law enforcement, my dad was law enforcement, and so I come from a place of that's what I know, and
Hmm.
I've always um, been, at my core, just a supporter of law enforcement for those reasons, because those are my experiences.
Yeah,
But there are many people who have extremely different experiences with law
for
enforcement,
sure.
and that's where they're coming from. And we need to just recognize that both are valid,
Yeah.
but we form our opinions based on our experiences. And if your experiences with, we have a floor director here, Eric, who is African American man who rides a motorcycle, and he tells us almost on a monthly basis about how he's getting pulled over, for. And I know Eric. I mean, he's a veteran. He's a really good man. I've known him for many
Yeah.
many years. And and he's saying I'm not doing anything wrong. I would tell you if I would, but yet I get pulled over. And so I have to hear that and believe him and understand that that's his reality,
Right.
right? And then juxtapose that with my reality and say, but I know there are really good cops
For
too.
sure.
But again, when you have human beings involved, people
Yeah.
there are just really bad people in every
Yep.
single field out there. There are
Yep.
horrible journalists who who are trying to ruin it for everybody else, and
Right.
in every field. And it's
Right.
unfortunate when there's a field where you're supposed to be protecting people,
Yeah. I
like law
I
enforcement.
think part of the news, and we're covering things that I didn't know we covered, but I'm glad we are. One of the
Sorry, I'm
things
going
that
like
has
this with you here.
No, it's okay. One of the things that's been interesting in this conversation, and one of the things when I look at news or journalism that I think some of the media have gotten away from is it seems now to be all editorializing. When it,
Yeah,
it was, hey, I'm Amy, and I'm saying this, this, and this happened in Minneapolis today, and this is what the response was. And,
yeah,
well, this is what I think of it, or this is my slant on it in a way that doesn't really tell the whole story, but it's the story we want you to hear.
yeah,
And then when there are people who do that, increasingly more so it seems, it then takes someone who's hell bent on giving the news the right way,
yeah.
and people go, "Well, it's more exciting this way." Who do you?
Yeah.
But it marginalizes everybody because then who do you trust?
Yeah. Well, and it
What's
feels
their
good to
angle?
listen. It feels good to listen to something that validates your how you feel, right? That feels really good.
Yeah,
So we all have family members who, and I would say that only because I try to watch everything, but I have family members who will only watch Fox News Channel. I have family members who only watch MSNBC, and so because it feels really good. But and I'm not perfect. Trust me, there is not a single journalist on this planet who is good at this, but the good ones will try at least have good intentions to try to come
yeah,
into every situation and try to see it from both sides and play it. I mean, we have a lot of checks and balances in our newsroom. We have, this might surprise people, but we actually have more diversity as far as our political views in this
hmm,
newsroom than I think people would believe, because statistics show that the majority of newsrooms are extremely are more
yeah,
liberal, right?
hmm,
And I think that's just a fact. Pew did a study on it not too many years ago that it's just a fact. So I think we got to get more diversity of thought in every
yeah,
sector, not just politics, but race, gender. We need to get that all in there so that we can start to check each other and say, well, but
for sure.
did you think about this? Or what if So we can't just kind of go based on a feeling of a few people in a newsroom, because
Right.
whatever they're feeling, that's going to drive the coverage. So
For sure. Yeah, that kind of solo echo chamber is damaging to everybody because,
yeah,
like you said, without that diversity of thought, you think you're delivering the straight news, and it just
yeah,
comes across as something else. And then, it's like this. Like you said, people like to hear stuff that relates them or makes them feel good. If
yeah,
they don't feel good, guess what?
yeah,
They just leave. They
yeah,
just leave, and it's hard. There's so much competition in the world now. Once you
yeah.
lose people, it's hard to drag them back. I sell insurance by trade,
Ah,
and there is a million insurance companies now, and so I don't try to be the cheapest. I don't try to be whatever, but I try to provide the best service. And but if you lose those people, I mean, it's so hard to gain that trust back and gain those clients back. So
yeah.
similar, not the same, but kind of similar.
No,
It's
totally.
about credibility. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah,
You
you
know,
need the contrary contrasting thoughts is
right.
so important to society, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
No, I think you're
but
right.
what
You've
do
been in
I
the
know?
business a long time. I mean, your opinion's valuable to me, and I think it's valuable to people who are listening because, you mentioned something about just being real on X or Twitter. I mean, that's what I like most about you is I think you see these buttoned up news people and you think, "My gosh, I mean, did they dress like that at home? I mean, what, their family is like, it's Amy reporting from the cereal bar today. We have three choices for you. And it's like, no,
Yeah,
that's not how it is.
it's hard because we were all brought up that way. When I started, we didn't have social media. We didn't have all these things. So we all started out very buttoned up. And there are people who still have a lot of trouble, and I'm one of them, even on the air, of just like, okay, how much can I let my hair down and how much do I need to kind of stay very professional? Because if you get too wacky on one side or the other, then you start
Yeah.
to alienate viewers. So you do try to stay as much in the middle as possible. But if I am going to keep doing this job, I have to just kind of be more of myself.
Yeah.
Otherwise I can't do this because
Yeah.
it wouldn't be fun.
I'm
So
just going to tell everyone that you get dressed up to take the garbage out.
this
That's
is,
just
you
what
see,
I'm
I'm in
thinking.
a hoodie right now. I'm at work. I got to be on the air in like 2 hours, and I will stay in this hoodie until right before I got to go out. I have
It's
sweatpants
okay.
on. Like this is, yeah, I
It's,
can't.
Listen, you don't need my endorsement, but it's totally fine. I mean, it's the interesting part is in the last couple of weeks, I've had a guy from NFL Network who was very, very laid back, Adam Rank. I had Chad Greenway,
Oh
and he
yeah.
was dressed up, but he was doing a speaking event. And
Uh,
I wore a suit because I was going to this kind of fundraiser dinner. I wore a suit, and he looks at me. And by the way, Chad Greenway is very big and very tall, and I am neither of those things. And so standing next to him, I'm like, why did I wear my short shoes tonight? It was ridiculous. It was like he was interviewing a little person. It was,
jeez.
and he didn't say anything, but he looks at me like, oh, yeah. And I said, God, I wish I had brought a stool or something because it was so crazy.
Funny. That's
One thing
awesome.
you mentioned, um, this is all great. Thank you, by the way. One of the things you mentioned was, this segment of Viking fans, because I think overall Viking fans are just such negative ass people most of the time. And it's not unjustified, right? I told a guy yesterday, it feels like and I don't want to demean PTSD, but it feels like a PTSD
Yeah.
in sportsdom because it seems like whenever we get something nice, and my example would be this recent. In August, I go to the stadium and I'm watching the game, Vikings game against the Raiders, and JJ McCarthy's throwing dots everywhere. He's throwing 50-yard touchdowns, and then the very next day his knee is dead.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you couldn't give us a month with the guy. You couldn't give us 6 weeks. Nope. JJ, oh, and by the way, they've had to fix his knee again.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the things I've tried to do, I'm getting to a question. One of the things I've tried to do is get people in the right vibe because I think vibes matter. That karma, that positive energy. We're just so
Yeah.
negative all the time that okay, are we a good 9-2 team? I'll say this. I've talked to NFL executives at my job for 9 years, and they tell me how hard it is to win in the NFL against teams that are not good. And
Yeah.
we've beaten good teams. So do you think that we are a good to great team, a great to Super Bowl team, or just an okay team, in your
Yeah.
opinion?
That's a really good question. I think so it's hard because I'm coming from a place of never having played professional football, and I always have to say that first because I feel like I trust the people who, like, I listen to Ben Lieber a lot on Power Trip in the
He's
morning.
great. He's great.
These are the people I lean on for how should I be feeling right now? Because frankly, as a fan, I can look at it and go, yeah, it's frustrating. So I think I tweeted after, I think it was the Jaguars game, that I was like, where I just out of, I was very emotional, and I was like, you know what? I, great, we won, but I do feel like I love this team, but I do feel like we'd probably get killed in the playoffs based on what I had seen. I think, yeah, it was 2 weeks in a row there where we just really struggled um, to come out on top against two teams that were just kind of lower on the
Garbage.
expectation.
Yeah.
Yeah, garbage. I mean, I think just as a fan, it was super frustrating, and I look at it this way, you know, I, I feel like, so I have a brother, and I have a brother who's 2 years younger than me, and I love him, right, unconditionally. I'd jump in front of a bus for him. I can criticize him and say, well, you idiot, why did you do this? And it's okay. But if somebody else comes in and says your brother's an idiot, they're gonna get punched in the throat.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm gonna take
Fighting
them down.
words.
So fighting words, right? And I
Yeah.
kind of feel that way about our teams, our teams. My teams, right? I think, okay, I love them so much. I would jump in front of a bus for these teams
Yeah.
because that's how much I love them. But at the same time, like, so then my expectations of them are really high. So when they don't start playing the way that I feel like they could, I get really ticked. I take it personally, right? It's emotional for me. So then I will say things like, yeah, I don't love holding my breath every time Sam Darnold lets that ball out of his hand. I just don't. It makes me
Yep.
frustrated. I don't like taking it all the way down and then almost losing to the Bears at the last couple of minutes. I don't, it's just all of these things. I'm like, this was not the same team that it was, whatever. If you
Yeah.
step back and go big picture, yes, okay. Yes, it is really hard to beat even the crappiest teams. It's really hard to beat them, and our record is incredible. We didn't expect anything, but I think the mistake was them showing us how well they could do against Houston, and then we
San Francisco. Yeah.
San Francisco, and then seeing it what it is now. And I'm, by the way, parallel storyline with the Timberwolves right now, which is why mentally have to, I know this is not a Timberwolves show, but I mentally have to kind of just
Totally
disconnect from
fine.
them right now
Yep. Yep.
because I'm in the same boat with them where they took us up here, and people are paying really good money right now, more than they have in a long time, to go see them play
Yep.
at Target Center,
Yep.
and they're not giving us full, 4 full quarters of effort, and it's
Yeah.
really ticking me off.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? Like, I'm so mad at them right now, but I love them, and I will always love them, and sports is everything to me. So, if that
Yeah.
answers your question, it's a really
Yeah.
long-winded way of saying, like, I love them more than anything, but then so it becomes more emotional for me, and then I get
Yeah.
more disappointed. But the negativity piece, like the old, oh yeah, or never gonna, we can't have any nice things. It's I think we joke about it, and we all feel that way. It's just, I think, you know yeah, but I also get annoyed at people who are like, oh, but it's okay, we've got this. And I'm like, how long have you been a fan, really? Just, how long have you been a fan? Because that's not how a true fan would see this. They have
Yeah.
been through the ringer. They feel it so deeply when things are either
Right.
going really well or in the toilet. And it's the mid fans who can kind of ride the whatever. Having said
Yeah.
that, it sounds like you're in a good place, so I
Well,
don't want to shame anybody who's in a good
no.
place with
No,
them
it's
right
okay. Um, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, so you've purchased your plane tickets to New Orleans in February. Is that what you're
now.
saying?
No, 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 no.
No? I
Definitely
misread
not.
that completely because I was like, man, I bet she's got hotel and everything.
No, no, I actually
No.
don't like watching the games in person at all. It's too cavernous for me.
Really?
No, no, I would
Wow.
100% rather watch it at home, get replay, get some commentary, figure out, what's going on.
Sure.
But it just gets, especially like US Bank Stadium, I love it, but it's also I don't feel connected to anything when I'm watching.
Yeah.
And you can't really walk away from the action if it gets dicey, which I like to be able to walk away for a second if I need to.
Yeah, that place, one of the allures for me, I actually applied for a job in 2015 on Instagram. They were hiring ticket takers and ushers.
Hmm.
And I didn't want to do any of that, but I wanted to be in that first game at the new stadium. And so I went through the whole process, and I ended up never working a day as a ticket taker and usher. I did stuff with Wi-Fi and mobile ticketing. and sort of worked my way up. And I'm a supervisor now. And so I watch a lot of football, but last year the Vikings were 2-6 at US Bank Stadium. And
Yeah.
I have to be straight with you. That's not as much fun as I make it seem when they're 2-6. In fact, the first game they ever lost, this is a funny story. So the first game they ever lost at US Bank Stadium, do you know which team they lost to?
First game? No, I don't.
They lost in overtime to the Detroit Lions.
Oh,
And I
wow.
never forget it because Golden Tate caught a pass. He pass interfered, caught a pass, ran into the end zone, and did a backflip into
Ah,
the end zone.
wow.
Right in that corner, opposite of where Stephon Diggs ran for the
Is that
touchdown.
right?
It is. And so I remember that. And I remember working in this section, and there was this older lady came out of Medtronic Club. And I always was trained to say, thanks for coming. I happened to say to this lady, how was your day? And she goes, like she's 80 years old. She goes, you, and she says, guess what? I pay all this money and this is what I get to watch them lose to Detroit.
Oh,
Now, this wasn't today's Detroit. This is,
yeah,
just past 0-16 Detroit.
yeah,
And so the sentiment in the stadium, because I used to go to the Metrodome all the time,
yeah,
when you were paying $30 for a ticket and they were meh, they were just okay. They wouldn't take you very far. They were sort of a nice date, first couple dates, and then eventually they were going to, they just weren't your type. Now they're paying so much money and they're so like financially invested that I think there's part of that too, where they go, I expect a certain product.
sure.
And you remember too when the Vikings were at Eden Prairie,
Mm-hmm.
Winter Park was sort of a dump, and they would go to Mankato for training camp, and those dorms were sort of a dump.
Or
And
dumb.
now, and I remember taking my kids to training camp, and they'd get autographs, and they'd ride bikes in front of the kids, and it was really
Yep,
kind of a homey environment. Where
100%.
now I love the Vikings, but it's very corporate, between the stadium and TCO Performance. But I tell people like it's really corporate, but I think what makes these Viking teams different than the old teams is their training facility is second to none.
Yep.
Their stadium is second to none. The amenities are great. The food program, I mean, they have a nutritional program for every one of their players. In fact, Byron Murphy, when he came here, I don't know if you heard that, I asked one of his relatives, I said, what's Byron loved most about being with the Vikings? And he said he doesn't have to pay for his food in the stadium or at the training
Oh,
facility. The Cardinals
wow.
would charge him to eat lunch.
That's crazy.
He said they debit out of their contract for lunch.
That's
Oh yeah,
crazy.
I know, right? That's the
Wow.
Cardinals.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
that's wild.
and
That's
here,
wild.
and so this is what one of the things that I think is important to differentiate between like what's happening with the Timberwolves right now and the Vikings, even though I, talk about them kind of in the same vein.
Yeah,
The Timberwolves those players aren't really trying. They're just
yeah,
not. Ant just said it the other night. They're not in it. Their heart's not in it. They're not getting along. The Vikings, on the other hand, like every team, we're not unique to this, but injuries have really losing Darisaw really flipped everything for us. And then it was
yeah,
just a domino effect from there. So, we've been handed just these sort of obstacles that again, every team has, and we're not special, but at its core, you've got KOC, who is probably the best, right? I mean, I don't have anything to compare it to, but
yeah,
everyone says probably the best coach to work under. You've got guys who seemingly are getting along and are there for each other. They talk about how they're there for each other, not only
yeah,
on the field, but off the field. You get this sense that, just the grittiness that it takes to push past some of these teams, even when, I mean, we could have easily dropped those couple of games against the garbage teams, but we didn't.
yeah,
So there is definitely, I don't want to paint it all as sort of negative because I think you can feel both. I think I can feel really
yeah,
disappointed in that, but also feel like, hey, there are some really good things going on here as well. The players have stepped up who maybe we didn't expect either. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good, and I guess that's at its core what's most important. Again, skill wise, because of where we are right now, especially. I mean, I know we'll get Riker back probably in a couple week or two.
yeah. This would be
But
his last game out, probably.
okay,
Should
good. Well,
be.
that helps,
Yeah,
but also not that. I mean, Parker Romo's been fantastic, but getting some of these players back, I would like to see TJ Hawkinson play a little bit of a bigger role than he
yeah,
has. He's had some clutch clutch catches. I feel horrible for JJ because he's basically become a decoy. And I know he's got other roles on the field that
Yeah.
he's stepping up to as well. But you know, we're doing really well, and they're trying. I guess my point is, at least they're putting in the effort.
Right.
And it's just, you know, the skill set in some ways just hasn't been there. I guess I'm glad that Darnold hasn't backed off of being aggressive. You know, it'd be easy to see him kind of cower back and shy away. You always hear the guys talk about how he's always just like this. He doesn't
Yeah.
get too high, he doesn't get too low. So I think that's good too. So again, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good there, but but coming off an emotional, draining 2.5 hour game where they almost lose it is, you know, you do end up feeling a certain way. So, you know,
The last 3 minutes of that fourth quarter, well, it was a minute and 40.
yeah.
I told my kids, don't worry, they're going to win. We're up by 11. You know, when KOC went for it on 4th and 1, I said, kick the damn field goal. Go up by 14, problem solved. But I
Yep.
think if that's Reichert, he probably does it. I want to
Yep.
touch base back on your Timberwolf point, you know,
Yeah.
because I'm going to give you some advice, because I'm probably way older than you, so I'm going to give you some fatherly advice. Maybe. You
I'll
never
take
know.
it.
I got some
I'll
blonde
take
in
it.
my beard. You never
I
know.
love it.
But the NBA season, I don't even start watching till like June.
Yeah.
Because those guys, that's the problem in that schedule, is their give a shit doesn't really work until May or June. When the rubber starts hitting the road, and you see these teams in the NBA that just start out really fast, and by
Yeah.
the time they get to June, and they're just done. And
Yeah,
so,
I've heard a
and
lot
you
of
know,
people say too, like Christmas is really when they start paying attention. I think again because the bar was set so high. You know, I interviewed
yeah,
Michael Grady and Jim Peterson, who do the play by play for now FanDuel, and
yeah,
I asked them in spring, like April, when did you know that this Timberwolves team could be this good? And they said training camp. We saw it preseason, and I was like, holy crap. So they
yeah,
saw this thing rolling from then. And so in my mind, it's just disappointing that, you know, but again, we got two new players right at the deadline, and you know, and not having Cat in there. So they're trying to still figure things out, and I get that. But
yeah,
again, it's not the L's that I care about. You guys, they can lose as many as they want. Just give us some effort and
yeah.
stop acting like, you know, like children and throwing
It's just
tantrums.
a lot of it just feels like cruise control.
Yeah.
Like we play when we want to play, and it's
Yeah.
like I know you got 82 games, but come on,
Yeah.
you know, come
Yeah.
on,
Ant said too, he's like, everybody's playing for themselves. I mean, that's coming from Anthony Edwards, not my mouth. That's coming from his mouth. So when you've got
yeah,
everybody with their own agenda, it's never gonna go well. And we're
yeah.
starting to see that. So I'm hopeful that they'll just get sick of losing and get sick of being embarrassed, and something will snap and they'll start to realize it. Because there have been times, I mean, remember, I think it was Gobert and Kyle Anderson were like starting to go to blows one time on the sidelines, like they were gonna
Yeah.
punch each other. And then we
Yeah.
saw the next season things start, you know, so I think they can come out of it, but you know,
Yeah.
that's
It's
the
going to
life of
be,
a sports fan in Minnesota, man. It's just like,
well, no, I mean, I always tell people I had a full head of hair when it all started. You know, really going back to 98, I don't talk about a lot of that on my TikTok or podcast. It's sort of like persona non grata because 98 was such a punch in the privates and in the face and in wherever you could be kicked where it hurts. Um, and the thing about 98 that upset me the most was when you're younger, like, well, growing up too, the Twins win 2 World Series in 4 years while I'm growing up. And
yep.
I think, my God, what a charmed place to be. And then it never happens again. And that's just a shitty ownership group. I mean, I'm not going to apologize for the poll ads. Once the daddy tried to move the team out of Minnesota. I love the Twins. I can't take the poll ads because they were complicit in that. And that was just a lie, a dirty deed between Selig and the poll ads. The thing with the Wilfs, okay, let me go back to 98. So 98, they missed the field goal. We were so close to a Super Bowl. And I feel like if we would have went to the Super Bowl, we probably would have won that Super Bowl.
Mhm.
And we were in the 2000 championship. We got whomped 41-0. And then in 09, that was as close as we've been in a long time to a Super Bowl. And then to have it sort of swept away by turnovers and, as it turned out, players who were cheating. Um, that's why I think so many Viking fans feel like they can't catch a break, is
Yeah.
because of kind of the way that old thing, the way the thing clicked before. There wasn't a lot of steady ownership. And I've met the Wilfs. They're very good people. They invest in that team. They love football. They want to win. And I don't know that there's an ownership group in the cities that feels like it does with the Wilfs. And they're not from here. They're just people that are so focused on, I mean, they're billionaires, right? They didn't get there by just accepting the we'll just take it easy route.
Yeah.
Um, so, and I wish the Timberwolves would get that, not to piggyback on that, but I wish they get their ownership. They need to get that all settled, because I
It's
think
going
that
to
hangs
very,
over the thing
very
too.
shortly. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it's scheduled. It was an arbitration, and I think literally any week now we should be getting some sort of an answer. So
Yeah.
I hope that helps, but I really think it's, the guys need to just they need to get it together for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
ownership.
yeah. No, it does. So I'm going to put you a little bit on the hot spot. I don't want to keep you too long. I've kept you a long time. I love it. Um, so, by the way, the Bears fired their coach today.
I saw that. When he said it was a presser afterwards, and he said something like, when they asked him about the final, minute or so, and he was like, something. It was something along the lines. Maybe you can help me. I like something
Yeah.
along the lines of like, yeah, I thought we handled it fine, or something like
Yeah,
it was.
it went
Wait,
the way
what?
we thought. Yeah, it
Yeah,
went the way we had thought or whatever.
yeah, it's something like that. And I thought, well, okay, if he didn't already, if the decision wasn't already made, that was a nail in the coffin for you.
I I have a friend who works around the Bears, and Kevin Warren used to work for the Vikings. He was the
Mm,
COO of the Vikings for
okay,
years, and now he's the president of the Bears. And they said after the game that Kevin Warren was lingering in the locker room.
not good.
That's not where Kevin Warren hangs out.
No, that's
I
not good.
think the news was probably delivered last night, but that last 25 seconds was malfeasance to everything that every football fan
Hundred
deserved. I
percent.
mean, I'm not a Bears fan, but compassionately, I mean, listen, I like Caleb. I think he's a good kid, and I don't want him to get pissed away because of guys who don't know their ass from a hole in the ground.
Right.
And that whole coaching and that McCaskey group is just kind of a joke ownership,
Mm,
and they just can't seem to get right. And it's this continual cycle of hire a GM, hire a coach, we draft a quarterback, the coach gets fired, and then we have to hire a new coach for this quarterback, and the coach goes, "Well, I don't want this guy. He's sort of a bum," and they
right.
just can rinse and repeat. I don't listen. I just want to live in a world where Caleb is completely mediocre for his entire career, right?
Exactly.
Because if he's good, that doesn't help me.
No, I know it. I know it. Yeah, no, I felt for him too. I felt for Bears fans as well. That's 2 weeks in a row because our game,
Yeah.
and then this one where you could. Oh man, I can't. We have a couple Bears fans here in the newsroom, and you just want to go give them a big hug because it's just I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
It's
it's
so
brutal. And
awful.
Lions fans, do you deal with Lions fans on your X?
Uh, Not as much, but I was at the Christmas Eve game last year, um, where we lost. It was a whiteout game. We lost.
Yeah, I took my
And
kids to that.
did you?
I
Yeah.
did.
So and I know a lot of Lions fans who, and I'm sure you do too, and most of me is like, oh, good for you. You're good people. But I gotta tell you, where we were sitting, and granted, we were up, you really couldn't get up much higher than where we were at US Bank. So we were in kind of the Wild West section, but there were some horrifically nasty Detroit fans, like worse than I had seen in, some Eagles fans act before. And I was like, okay, I don't know that I can really be all in on this. So I guess if they, I think they'll probably win it all. I really do. I think they just have the most complete team. I don't even
Yeah.
think Kansas City is on the same level. And
Right.
they have been so consistently good on all fronts that I just feel like I guess I wouldn't hate it. It's not like a dynasty team that keeps going back and whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. Do
They
you have
got a they
what are
got
your
a
thoughts on
nine
Detroit?
yeah, they got a 98 Vikings feel to them.
Oh yeah,
Like everything's going right. They're
yeah,
averaging all these points. They're rolling out the teams they're supposed to roll.
yeah.
Um, and then I've said this and I'll say it from the beginning. There are two teams the Lions absolutely do not want anything to do with in the playoffs, and that's the Packers and the Vikings. Because
Hmm.
that third divisional game is Xanadu. You never know what you're going to get. And the last thing is the person that knows you best
Yeah, true.
coming in and going, well, remember the last time we played them a game and a half ago or whatever, and they did
Yeah,
this? It
the
looks
Bears
like they're
almost beat
doing
them.
this.
The Bears came this close to beating them. So
Yep.
I mean, that should show you. And granted, the Bears, I do think, have been on a little bit of a upwards trajectory.
Agree.
You
Yeah.
know, so there's that. But you're right. I think that we play them last game of the season, right? Is that
Yeah, Detroit. Yeah, at
Detroit?
Detroit.
So I mean, who knows? But yeah, I mean, I hope we can take him down. It'll probably matter. I would think it's going to matter. Our division is bonkers. You know, that's part of the problem too for us. If we were in any other division, you know, this would probably be different. I mean, the
Yeah.
record would be much stronger. But yeah,
Well, we brace for this. We could be a 14-win team as a 2 or 3 seed, or as a 2 or 3 in the
yeah,
division. And we could be on the road. So imagine we win 14 games.
yeah.
We go on the road to play Kirk Cousins in the first round of the playoffs. We have to go on the road with 14 wins.
Unbelievable. I know it.
That
It's unbelievable.
that's such a Vikings thing to do too.
It
That would
is,
be just a Vikings thing to do.
but also, do we need to revisit 2022? Speaking of Daniel Jones and you know, all of this hubbub now. I mean, I was there for that game. I was covering it because we were supposed to win that game.
Yeah.
I will say Giants fans, generally speaking, very nice fans. I had
Very
love
cool. They're very
They're
mellow.
very
Yeah.
cool. And we have this we unify around the fact that we all hate Eagles fans. So there's
Yeah.
that too. But yeah.
Did you hear what Tom Brady said in the telecast yesterday?
Okay, I didn't, but I'm seeing on Twitter people talking about it.
Yeah.
What did he
He made
diss?
a comment. Somebody made a catch down the sideline, a really good Giants catch, and he said, "You know what? They always do things that scare me, the Giants." So that's the one thing that the Giants have. I mean, if you want to talk about like why they have such that like, hey, I've been there, done that attitude. Well, let's see. They beat one of the best teams in the history of sports by beating that undefeated Patriots team.
Yeah.
And they beat them twice in the Super Bowl. Like Eli's just normally a bum, and when he plays Tom Brady, he goes, "I'm just going to beat you in the biggest game of the year ever twice." It's like how?
I know. It's
Like
insane. Yeah.
ridiculous stuff.
Well, Daniel
Yeah.
Jones has a lot to be grateful for as far as like, I mean, not only are we giving him this opportunity, we got him a huge contract after 22. And now I think the deal with him is you're not asking, sorry, I don't mean to go on another tangent,
No,
but
do it. You
I
do it.
think it's really good for Daniel Jones. I think it's great for him. I don't know, you know, he probably won't see the light of day here, which is fine. I just hope we don't dump too many resources into him. Like we obviously have a lot
Right.
going on right now. So, you know, I hope we're not having to like spread people too thin. I think the depth of coaching and coaches is deep enough that, you know, it's not like KOC is going to be spending his free time with him, but, yeah, I think it's great for Daniel Jones. I think he'll learn a lot
Yeah.
and he'll gain a lot and hopefully spin it out into, you know, into another team. But
Right. Well, and Daniel Jones, I mean, nobody did the Giants more dirty than the Vikings in 22.
right.
Because if we win that game, he don't get paid.
Yep.
Saquon probably does. Now
Yes.
Saquon's on a different team. They paid Daniel Jones. It just went bonkers for
Can you
them.
imagine? I know. Letting Saquon, look at what's happening with Saquon right now. My gosh, the Giants. Yeah, maybe we
And
don't
they
have it
give the
that
bag to
bad.
Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
They give all that money to Daniel Jones. And, I knew it was fool's gold because when people talk to that 22 team, I said, I love the wins. The Bills win that big comeback at US Bank Stadium, the 33-0, which, by the way, the only game I've missed at US Bank Stadium was the 33-0. I do food truck too. I had a catering. And so I call my buddies at the stadium at halftime. I go, suckers. I didn't miss nothing because I wanted to watch them clinch the division. I said, next week I'll be there. And
Yeah.
then womp 30, they end up winning again, it was
Yes.
overtime. And so of course they're just like, hey, you've only missed the greatest comeback in NFL history. On one day you're gone in 9 or in 8 seasons. I'm like,
Unbelievable. Also, you need to stop working so many jobs. I'm worried about you.
I also own a laundromat and a car wash.
Stop.
Listen, Amy, I'm not like you. You have one job that you're really good at. I'm still searching for that, right? Podcast, TikTok, car wash, laundromat, insurance,
Listen,
stadium
I think
guy.
no, I think you're actually diversifying, and that's probably way smarter than putting all your eggs in one basket. So good for you.
Well, there's job security for you because you're great at what you do. And,
Thanks.
not every, I mean, I think people don't understand this going on TV or being on the radio, this kind of thing. I mean, there is inherent risk to it now with as crazy as people are. And to be really good at it, there's a level that you have to be to separate yourself from regular people. I mean, I've watched a lot of local news and I don't want to demean any of them, but the difference in production and just the people that get to where you're at, I mean, it's hard work, Amy. I mean, it's not like you just showed up one day and said, well, I'm super pretty and I want a job and please have it. I mean, not that you're not one
Thanks.
of the beautiful people, but I'm certain there's more to it. I'm certain of it.
Thanks. Oh, I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when we all started, well, a lot of us older people who are in this business still, like I said, we didn't get in it for any other reason other than we just kind of loved it. And
Yeah.
you only stick with it if you're okay with working holidays and crazy hours. And, you start out making nothing, and it takes a long time for you to be able to feel like, okay, I can make a living at doing this.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of those industries. And
Right.
so yeah, a lot of change, but I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. This podcast comes with compliments. Always. It's always compliments. So I wanted to put you on the spot. So the Vikings have 6 games left, starting
Oh,
this Sunday at US Bank Stadium against the Cardinals. So we're going to go through really quickly, game by game,
okay.
and then I'm not going to give you like a minute to think about it. So it's going to be sort of rapid fire because
Okay.
I don't want you to overthink this because that's where
Yeah,
we get in
got it.
trouble.
Yep.
Okay. My instructions were longer than I'm going to give you. Okay. At home against the Cardinals.
Yeah, I think we take that one.
Okay. At home against Kirk Cousins and the Falcons.
I'm gonna say we're gonna take that one. It's gonna be a shootout, but yeah, we'll take it.
Perfect. At home whiteout game against the Bears.
I do think we can take that one too. I really do. I think
Yeah.
the home crowd. We've been on the road 3 games now, and I think we need this. The home crowd. The U.S. Bank. Nothing else like it. Really.
That whiteout game's got some juice.
It does.
It's got some juice. It's Monday
Yes.
night. I mean, the Bears are, whether they have a different coach or not, they're shambles right now.
100%.
There's only so many gut punches you can take emotionally where you just go, next year.
Yeah.
At Seattle.
Yeah. I think we do. I think we do take that one.
Okay.
Yep.
At home against that team from the East, the Green Bay Packers.
I'm not gonna lie, they scare me. I didn't have. Yeah, I don't know. Not overthinking. That one's at home because we beat them at Lambeau. Yeah,
We
this one's
did.
at.
Yep, we were up
Okay, yeah.
28-0. That's one of those what I
I mean,
call
I'm
meat
gonna go all
grinder
in.
games
I'm
at
just
the
gonna
end.
go all in and say, yeah, we're gonna take that any home game we're gonna take.
Okay. And then at Detroit, we don't know the weird game. This weird thing about Detroit is we don't know at the end of the season if it's. Here's what I will say. Right now, you have them at let's see. Well, it's 9. So 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. You'd going into that game, you have them at 14-2.
Yeah,
The division could be on the line if the Lions have won out. So,
I don't know. I don't know. My guts just telling me, just because I've given them so many here, that there's got to be one they're gonna drop in there, and I feel like that is the one that makes the most sense to me that we would drop. So, I mean, I hate to say it. I hate to be like, oh, we can't do it, but I just feel like the odds are really going to be too high.
yeah.
And then being in Detroit, yeah,
And it'll matter probably. Could
yeah,
matter.
yeah. I hate to say it. I love them so much, the Vikings, but I just don't know that they can climb
Yeah.
that hill. Yeah.
Yeah, you had them at 14-3. I went through the schedule when I first did this and I post on YouTube and on TikTok. I said 10-7 for the year. And now if they finish 10-7, I told my daughter who's 10, I go, boy, the wheels have come off the train if they finish 10-7. I mean, to think that they would win only one more game and lose 5 more. I
Yeah.
mean, something's gone wrong, major injury, knock on
And
whatever.
that's the other thing. Yeah. Assuming that everything stays status quo, or we get Reichert
Yeah.
back and nobody else can. Darisa's out for the season, right? I think
He
he's not coming
Yeah.
back. So,
It sounds like Robinson's foot's no big deal. He's just a
good.
big guy with it's an injury he got a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
And he wasn't they haven't ruled him out this weekend. This weekend they've ruled out I saw the injury report earlier. They ruled out Josh Oliver again. He's out
Shoot.
for Sunday, the tight end. Yeah, he's played so well. But I think it opens up some things for Hawkinson. I told one of my friends the other day who's a Bear fan, he goes, your offense is really good. And I said, here's the deal. When we play these games, what is it? Last week was the first game where we had Jefferson, Hawkinson, Addison, and Jones all in the same, and, great. Go ahead and double cover JJ. If you don't double cover Addison or Hawkinson, which is hard enough to cover anyways. It's a pick your poison situation, and all we need Darnold to do is just keep his feet right, make good throws. Because man, that throw he made to Addison where he tiptoed down the sideline, that was in O'Connell said this week that's the same throw that Darnold made in that Colts game that got intercepted. But
Wow.
Darnold was off schedule with his timing and threw it too late, and that guy jumped it. If he'd have thrown
Yeah.
it when he needed to, it'd have been the
Would
same
have been
play that Addison
bullet.
caught.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No,
That,
he's a great quarterback. I think we're just a little PTSD from all the interceptions, after the bye
yeah,
and everything. But yeah, no, Addison has been incredible. Munt has been great. I mean, we've just had. I want to see Aaron Jones have a breakout game though.
yeah,
He's had some really good games. I want to see him just really succeed. He seems like
right,
such a good guy.
yeah.
Um, you know, and all,
He's just, I've met him a couple times, and he is just exactly what you think. Such a humble
Mhm.
guy. And he honestly, I don't say this about everybody I meet at US Bank Stadium. He's just a cool guy.
That's great.
Like he's just,
Yeah.
I don't know what that means exactly. He's just
No,
cool,
yeah, and
you
you
know?
like to hear that because we get the inside scoop from all of our sports people, right? Who are
Yeah.
there and interviewing them, and they're in their great moments and in their not so great moments, and the ones who are good people, even when they're struggling or have had a bad game,
Hmm.
that goes a long way. And
Yeah.
we hear about that, and they come back and they'll tell us, well, this guy, like Jefferson's like that. I mean, Justin Jefferson, you would not think he could, he doesn't have to be that way, but
Right.
he is.
Yeah.
Aaron Jones is like that. Dalton Reisner is like that. The list goes on and on. Really, a lot of really good guys
Yeah.
who are putting it all out there. So
Yeah. So I have two more questions.
okay,
The first one is, can I ever bring you back for another podcast?
yeah. Are you sure? I don't know. I talk a lot.
No,
So
listen, Amy, this has been great. Honestly, I've had so much fun, and I love to do the sports stuff, but I think just with your background and everything you do, this has been great. I mean, because
sure,
I
yeah.
love sports, but I don't get a chance to talk about a lot of other things, which I really love. I've been in politics off and on since I was like 21.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I'm the youngest mayor in the history of Minnesota,
My God.
actually.
See what? Seriously, what have you not done? This is unbelievable to me. You
I've
are
done,
everywhere.
my kids are going to spend $1,000 on my obit because I've had so many different jobs, and I like taking jobs because it's a way to get paid to do things that you learn about.
Yeah.
Like I could have hobbies, but I don't get paid anything for those.
Right.
So like,
Wait. So, which
anyways,
city were you mayor of?
it was a little town called Ceylon,
Elon.
Ceylon. So it's south of Fairmont,
Oh
and
yeah.
you might know that that's actually the birthplace of Walter Mondale.
Okay,
So that
that's how I've heard of it.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So this studio right now was the house that Walter Mondale was born in. It was an old church parsonage. I own that house. Yeah,
Stop
yeah.
it. You are a walking, talking feature story. Like
I,
everything about you, we could do a story on. That's incredible.
when I've met Walter Mondale, I used to go up and have lunch with him because he's a Ceylon guy, and we were talking about this is a funny Walter Mondale story. We were talking about his house and where because his dad was the Methodist minister,
Huh.
and we were talking about which room he was in, and he goes, "I'd love to see the house sometime." He came down one time and visited the house. Well, anyways, we were in his office at Dorsey and Whitney, and he's got this wall that is just a who's who of 20th century politics. I mean, pictures of all these different types of leaders from all around the world because he was ambassador to Japan, he was a senator, he was vice president, did a million things. And I said a couple of things. I said, number one, I said, in order for me to be the highest elected person from Ceylon, I actually have to be president. And he says, I tried that once. I don't recommend it. And then he had such a laid back sense of humor for a guy who had accomplished so much.
Hmm.
And then he says, there's this picture of him with his arm around Bill Clinton at a grain elevator in Iowa. And I said, oh, there's you with President Clinton. He said, yeah. He said, it's a shame what happened with Bill and that girl.
He
That's
said
how he
that.
said it. That's what he said. Bill and that girl.
That's classic.
I know.
Wow.
That's such
Wow.
a Minnesota thing to
What a
say.
story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to say it like that. That Bill and that girl.
Yeah. So
Oh.
Amy, last question.
Yeah.
What is one, and you can answer it or not. You've been great. If you don't want to answer this one, it's fine. I won't make you feel too bad about it. What's one thing that most people in Minnesota that know you on the news, what's one thing about you that they wouldn't know?
Let's see. I I left TV for several years. I We lived in Ecuador for 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so my husband and I got married. We were commuting back and forth from DC, and then his job took us overseas. So I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old at the time, and we moved to Ecuador for 2 years. And I did some radio news from my closet in Ecuador, Minnesota news from there. But yeah, but no, we lived there, and it was amazing. It was an amazing 2 years. It's
I had no
fantastic.
idea.
Yeah, there you
I
go.
knew you were in Fargo for a little
Yes,
while, weren't
yeah.
you?
Started in Fargo.
Yeah.
I went to school in Moorhead, so then I
Yeah.
worked in Fargo and Minot. Then went out to Raleigh, North Carolina, and then came back here to Care 11. Took some time off. Went over to Bring Me the News for a while, the online
Yeah.
news organization, and then came over here. So been here
Yeah.
for almost 10 years. Yeah, it'll be 10 years coming up.
Wowzer. That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah. Where does the time go when you're having fun, right?
Oh, no kidding. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So
I'm
how
really.
old are your kids? I guess I
I
had
got
three
a.
questions.
Yeah, no, it's okay. 14 and 16. A
Oh, very
16-year-old
good.
daughter and a 14-year-old son.
Yeah. I'm not busy at all. I have 5 children. My
Of
oldest,
course
so I
you
have
do.
24, 22, and a 9-year-old son. And then
Wow.
I know, good family planning. And then I have a 18-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old daughter
Nice.
who are
That's
huge Viking fans. I actually took my oldest daughter to London with me.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, it was
That's so
great.
great.
Well, and that was funny because we went to London. Oh, I ran into the president of the Vikings, Andrew Miller,
Hmm.
at the San Francisco game, and we were chatting. And he says, "Are you going to London?" I said, "I am going to London." He said, "Maybe I'll run into you." And I said, "To be honest, Andrew, because I ran into him at Soldier Field last year when I was just there for a game."
Mm.
And I said, to be honest, we don't really hang out in the same circles. I would love to be in your circle because my circle's kind of dank and terrible. And he goes, John, he said, you never know how life will work out. So my daughter and I are at Big Ben, and she says, we really ought to get a picture because we were going to get a picture at Buckingham Palace
Yeah.
and have it me and her in front of Buckingham Palace, and then do a Christmas card, and down below it'll say not pictured, and have all the rest of my kids on there because they hate my guts for taking her.
I bet.
And so we go over, we take the bus, and I let her handle all the navigation because, that's crazy over there. It's a huge city,
Hmm.
huge. And we get over to Buckingham Palace, and I'm talking to this guy. He's a Packer fan from Germany. And then this English guy who they're friends. And they were on holiday. That's what they call it.
Sure.
And I'm standing there, and I feel this guy come up and put his arm around me. And it's Andrew Miller, the president of the Vikings, and his wife.
Get out of here.
No, seriously. And he says, John. And my daughter's like, wait, he knows you? I go, I saw him last year at Soldier Field. You were with me. And she goes, oh, yeah, right. She goes, I can't believe he knew who you were. And I
Oh,
go, well, Addie, I'm a big deal. I mean, are you kidding me? Give me some credit here, lady.
seriously.
So I made sure, I made sure I took a picture of me and Andrew Miller and his wife in front of Buckingham Palace.
That's
Andrew doesn't know it yet, but he's my Christmas card now.
That's classic.
Just put
I
Andrew
love
Miller in
it.
big letters, and then just put also picture John and Addie Jabot.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
so
So
great. Well,
yeah,
that's your. I mean, I know you were an actual mayor, but that's what we call people. Like Jeff Passelt, when
mm,
he was here, we used to call him the mayor because he knew everybody.
yeah,
So like you're literally the mayor, and that should be your nickname too, the mayor, because you just know everybody.
yeah. Well, it's funny. I've loved that. I've had that job off and on. My first day as mayor, this is wild. You talked about doing a story, but what was wild to me was I was elected the youngest mayor in the history of Minnesota. I was 21. And it was the 1999. It was January 1st. Well, the day before, I thought, I should go out and have some drinks to celebrate because I'm finally 21. I can have some drinks on New Year's. But I thought, you know what? I'm going to be mayor now. Like, mayors don't go out and get drunk at 21 or whatever, have some drinks. And so I laid on the couch, and at about 4 in the morning, I hear that, back then they didn't have pagers for fire department. I wasn't on the fire department. I hear the siren for the fire to page the firefighters go off in this little small town I live in. I walk out my front door and I look to the left, and before I can turn left, I see this orange glow over this tree line like 2 blocks away. My first day as mayor, 6 people died in a house fire
Are you
in
serious?
my town of 400.
Oh my gosh,
Yep.
that's
And
incredible.
I'll never forget. I mean, I didn't know what to do. I drove down there, tried to render aid, to because the family that lived across the street, a husband and wife, her daughter was in the house and they couldn't get
Oh,
her out. Her
oh,
husband got blasted off the door trying to open it, and that's what exacerbated the rest of the fire. Three
yep.
children and 3 adults passed away.
Oh my gosh.
We have a news conference that night, and I'm standing next to the fire chief, and there's a guy from CBS. It wasn't a local guy, it was a national guy who came
Mm,
because it was
mm.
January 1st and there's 6 people died in a fire. And he says, Chief, he said, would you mind? I wonder if I could get a comment from your mayor. Is he around? And my chief, who's probably 50 years old, points to me and he says, that's the mayor. He goes, yeah, right. He goes, how old are you? And I said, listen, buddy, you get one question. Is that your question?
Oh
And he
yeah,
goes,
right.
no, it isn't. I go, I'm 21. He goes, how long you been mayor? About 16 hours.
Oh,
And he looked at me
wow.
and he felt like hell because it was honestly one of the worst days. It was crazy. I mean, I'm not to get dark, but I mean, I have to go to the funeral home and get our scoop stretcher back for the ambulance because there were bags, body bags. I mean, it was just, Amy,
Holy
I had such high
cow.
hopes for being mayor, and then
That
everybody
happened.
dies. And so my buddy,
That's
I'm standing next to one of my best friends. He puts his arm around me and he says, John, he leans in, he goes, at this rate, the whole city's going to be dead in 2 weeks under your leadership.
yikes. Oh
And,
my
and
God.
I go, man, it kind of
Wow.
made me laugh because I sure hope that was, and it didn't happen that way, but
That's
I just
incredible
had
to
all
have that
those
happen right
hopes.
away.
I had all those hopes for being mayor, and then it was like, I don't know, God said this is a different path for you,
Yeah.
and you're gonna have to. And it was really a good experience learning wise for me because it helped me deal with people, and I was forced to get into the working parts of government to try and get people help and
Yeah.
figure out. Because at 21, I told everybody, "Oh, please vote for me because I'm gonna be the answer to everything." And I get in there and I'm like, I didn't have time to kind of sit back and learn. I had to sort of jump in and just be the
Yeah.
guy.
Just do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Sure.
yeah.
Man, that is a
Yeah.
dose of harsh reality right out of the gate. But like you said, I mean,
Well,
it shaped you into who you are today.
yeah.
So that's
That
how it
was
works.
That was wild. I mean, that we didn't have to talk about that, but that was,
No,
it was
that's
a crazy,
that
crazy
is
moment for
crazy.
me. And, you know,
Wow. Amazing.
so
What year was that? That was
1999.
99. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. My dad lived in St. Paul, and the next day on the Pioneer Press was my quote with a picture of the fire on the front of the Pioneer Press. And I
Really?
know this because he cut it out.
Oh,
And he said, and then whenever the Pioneer Press the Tribune would post something about the youngest mayor in Minnesota and they'd get it wrong, he would call the editor and make sure that they did a retraction and listed who the real youngest mayor was.
that's right. Yes.
That was my dad in St. Paul. He was eye hawking the newspaper every day to see if there were articles because he was
That's a
proud of
proud
that,
dad. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's
So,
awesome.
Amy, thank you so much. This has
You're
been
welcome.
great. I mean it sincerely from the bottom of my heart. This is one of the interviews I was most nervous about, most excited about.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. No
I
need to be nervous. It's
well,
just me.
you've honestly been great, and if you'd be
Thank you.
gracious enough, I'd love to have you back, maybe around playoff time.
Sure. Yeah. You
Yeah,
bet. I love
yeah.
it.
I mean, if
Yeah.
you want to make this a regular thing, listen, I'll put you on the payroll, but I'm not going to jump right in, right? We're just baby steps
It's
here.
all good. No,
Yeah.
anytime. I don't know, people, nobody really cares what I have to say. Like I'm
Oh,
not,
that
you know what I mean? I'm just shooting from the hip 100% of the time, but I'm happy to come back anytime you'd like me to.
I appreciate that. I tell people all the time, I'm sort of somebody. Think of like you walk up to a beach and there's all that sand and all those kind of rounded rocks.
Yeah.
It took a long time to round those rocks off. I'm the wave, right? Yeah, right away I don't get much done, but over time I round you off. I get you right
Great.
where I want you to be.
That's perfect. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's perfect.
yeah.
Yeah, no,
So,
I'm happy to do it.
happy holidays. God bless you, and thanks again, Amy. I
Oh,
appreciate
thank
it.
you. Yeah, you too.
Yeah.
Happy holidays to your family.
Skol Vikings.
All right, school.